and this was selected by friend of the pod, Matthew McLister. Matthew runs the indie blog website Blinded By The Floodlights, and you can follow his work on Instagram at Blinded By The Floodlights, all one word. So I'm going to take the opportunity, because we're sharing the fives. I'll kick this one off because it's a rare one where I know the discography of the artist. And yeah, Sanford. I mean, one of these artists who, you know, when he kind of broke, he was kind of a rare exception of an artist breaking who I'm got really into as well. I quite often don't see the hype for one at that level, because he seems to have, ever since he's been in music, seems to have been at this ridiculously high level and you know, doing massive shows. It almost seems premature, but it's not, because he's that popular. And so I found Hypersonic Missiles was one of my albums of the year back in 2019 or 2018, I think. 2019, yeah. So just fantastic, I thought that one was. Obviously followed up with, where are we now? Second album with 17 Going Under, which obviously the track itself is you know, very much his calling card as an artist, and you know, a microcosm of who he is, and the classic kind of Springsteen-esque kind of inspiration, which he doesn't shy away from. It's very much part of what he does as an artist. And even though I've sort of said in the past, Springsteen is not someone who's massively, you know, I've massively got into, weirdly with Sam Fender, I was all in. and again, like, whilst I actually don't think 17 Going Under was as good as Hypersonic Missiles, mainly because of one track which I thought was, which I didn't like at all. But this was, you know, it's 2 albums in, absolutely fantastic. You know, saw him at headlining Reading Festival, I think maybe it's a couple of years ago, and I thought, again, he just absolutely owned the stage, and you know, just someone who's just, he's got it, he's flaunting it, and yeah, you know, 2 in, fantastic, but where will he go next? And this is the really interesting one for me. And you know, I mentioned there was one song on his previous album I really disliked, and my worry was that if he didn't change things up kind of significantly, that's where we might land by album number 3. And I think overall that's a bit where I've landed with people watching, where sort of musically there's not much to turn the dial here, and not much to kind of match his lyrics. You know, as I said like earlier in the pod, that like the 5 albums we've selected here, the majority, I think lyrically are really fascinating, and there's no let up in just really powerful, affecting lyrics which Sam has written here on People Watching. You know, there's quite a lot. I think is one or both. I think maybe one of his grandparents died, or both of them, and I know that you know, one of the songs here kind of touches upon that. You know, it means something essentially, you know, and it always has done in his music, and I think that's what remains his appeal. And there are high points here. I mean, TV Dinner for me is probably my favorite track. Just love the dramatic piano, the production on it. Lyrically it goes in a different direction, where he's you know, getting the knives out and you know, just telling everyone to back off and give him his privacy. You know, he's a young man who's, we've said ever since he's kind of been in the music industry, he's been almost ubiquitous. You know, can't really escape him. You know, for some people that would be a good thing, for others maybe not. But you know, but everything which comes with that. And obviously this year or the end of last year, we had obviously the tragic One Direction death of one of the band members there. You know, he references Amy Winehouse in this song as well, and I think, you know, it's a really important thing he's highlighting, and like in his own sort of way he's basically saying back off. But I just love the way this track is arranged, and it's just so compelling. One I want to go back to again and again. I think the way he signs off is also what he has in his armory. A very stripped back work called "Remember My Name," and this is actually the one which refers to his grandparent, and his grandparents in general. You know, an ode to them. Just piano and just letting his voice do the work, and he's always had a fantastic vocal range, and he's a brilliant singer. So they're my two top tracks from this album. You know, I think the lead single "People Watching" is great as well. It's very much you hear it, you know exactly who it is, but he does it very well. It's great. Yeah, and Rain Me In, I think, is another one which is very much worth sort of checking out if you haven't heard it already. But I think where it falls down is just, musically, I just find myself not that interested as an album in going back to these, and as a whole experience. It ends up being very middle of the road, you know, and doesn't really, you know, support his lyrics and how good they are. Although, having said that, Arm's Length is an interesting one in terms of it's almost like the opposite of Will We Talk. You know, in Will We Talk, you know, he's talking about how he's going to be there for his one night stand, and of course they're going to chat, and it's not just a physical moment. Whereas Arm's Length is pretty much like, I just want a bit of fun. And similarly, the output of this song is just not of much interest at all. So that's kind of like a sad narrative arc, you know, career-wise, I suppose. But that's the only one I would say lyrically is just uninteresting. The rest lyrically are fantastic, but just some of the compositions are uninteresting. And I feel that when, a bit like how I felt about Royal Blood, two brilliant first albums, and then by the third you're kind of going, what can you do different? And I didn't hear enough different to be that fussed by that point, despite loving the first two. And I've kind of reached a similar point here with Sam. But at least, you know, his vocals sort of bring you back in, and there are a few tracks which are certainly, you know, highlights and will be for the year. But yeah, ultimately it's a step down from his previous work, and I'm hoping for better on album number 4. So, Karl.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm similar to you, but maybe a bit more favourable.
Yeah.
I'd say there's, I mean, this was an album, like you, really looking forward to. And for me, while I enjoyed Hypersonic Missiles, for me, it was his last record, 17 Going Under, that really connected with me. Ended up in my top 10 for the year. An album I still revisit a few years later too. I mean, listening to People Watching has just made me want to go back to that record, which I have done since. But yeah, I think while I kind of appreciated Hypersonic Missiles, I think this one really, for me, marked him out as this one, but by this one I mean 17 Going Under. I think this one really marked him out as a great songwriter for me. I just loved the raw, like, autobiographical nature of that record, and there was just like so much in there that I could, you know, relate with as well. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it just really connected with me, and it just, set a very high bar going into this one. And I will say I really enjoy it. But for me, I don't think it quite matches up to certainly 17 Going Under for me. At least not yet anyway. I mean, you know, it's one of those that, you know, I'm booked to see him at Rock Worked later in the year. So it's always like, we'll see if that changes throughout the year, the more I'll start playing it. But yeah, I think right now it is the album, as you say, that you kind of expect it to be at this point in Sam's career. It's, you know, he's got these major festival headline slots. He's got the big stadium shows this summer. And it feels like an album that is definitely built with, you know, that in mind. And I think the issue for me is for all the big anthems and shades of, you know, Springsteen, as you mentioned, and obviously the Killers, come through. I think for me, it's just lost that bit of angst and maybe even some of the variety that made, the previous album such a joy. Definitely noticed that was the biggest thing that I noticed this time around is there was a bit more of a formula to the song structures this time around. I mean, he's always kind of had his style, but for me, this one was very much like, okay, chorus, breakdown, saxophone solo. You kind of and he kind of like stuck to that. And like you say, the one where he does maybe deviate a bit more is TV Dinner, which I agree that's definitely a highlight for me. Just really cinematic, quite epic. Obviously, he's got that poetic, almost like a poetic rant going on about the dark side of fame, and just a really powerful song. So yeah, I mean that's probably the downside to me is that it's maybe just not as gritty or varied as his previous work. But for me, there's still a lot that I love here too. Obviously, Adam from the War on Drugs on production duties, another band that I really love, and you can definitely hear like his influence coming through on the likes of like the title track is like such a War on Drugs kind of tune. Just really catchy as hell. Wild Long Lie, which I didn't rate it when it came out as a single, but now it's probably my favorite on here. I just love the like slow build nature of it and the way that song just kind of grows as it goes along. I know you don't rate Arm's Length, but really like that song. And Crumbling Empire, that's like a really great purple patch for me with midway through is those three songs. There's some other ones on there, is that Rein Me In has got that great now I'm working myself up to a nice warm bliss, all manner and ruse of you bring like tinnitus. It's like, that turn of phrase that he's got, that's still, that songwriting still very much shines through. It's more than a few points here. Obviously we've got to talk about Remember My Name, which again, we spoke about TV Dinner being one that kind of deviates. Remember My Name's probably another one that does as well. Written from the perspective of his, grandfather speaking to his grandmother, who's, obviously can't remember him. She's got dementia, and it's just really heartbreaking song. And then again, the lyrics, to them it's a council house, to me it's a home. It's just like, it really pulls on the heartstrings, that song. And I'm still not sure where I'll land on this record. I think for me, it's another great effort from Sam. It's one album that I've found myself revisited a lot already, despite not being overly sure about it yet. It's still one that, those big singles that I'm a fan of, I'm still going back to an awful lot. So I'm not ready to call it his best work. I know some people have, but I think for me, 17 still edges it. Obviously, for you, Hypersonic, this still edges it. So I think he's one of those artists that everyone will probably have their favorite. But without a doubt, there's some real highlights here, and he's just still an artist and a songwriter that I've got an awful lot of time for.
I mean, whilst I didn't pull it out, I mean, Wild Long Lie, what I do like about that one is sort of he's kind of not enjoying being out with his mates and all the same old kind of conversations and that sort of thing, and just that everybody's dying for their turn to pull out anecdotes fraught with bloody lies, which it made me think of when I'd been out and back in the day, not current people, but that was very relatable, and like a lot of this is. So there we go. So some mixed thoughts on people watching.